Hey everybody, good to see you again. I suspect you all feel like experts in the book of Philippians after studying for these past few weeks. You're probably ready to write an exhaustive commentary on the letter. Well, maybe not, but I hope you feel like you're really familiar with it and you learned some things and it made a difference in your life. That's what it's all about. Your faith was built, you were challenged and encouraged. Well, today we're going to talk about a really important and fascinating topic, worldview questions. Worldview questions are questions that can be used to understand the lens through which someone views the world, the assumptions that undergird what they believe and how they interpret what they experience. You may or may not directly ask somebody these questions, but you can often infer their answers to these questions by the views and perspectives they espouse, the causes they're passionate about, the moral decisions they make, and their explanations and responses to major life and world events. The goal isn't to be able to put a label on them, but rather to understand the worldview category they most closely associate with, whether they know it or not. This enables us to see the world from their perspective. It's almost like a missionary overseas learning the culture of the people they have moved to live among. Since America has become increasingly pluralistic in its culture, there's almost nothing that every person agrees on. We need to understand the perspective of people that we interact with so we can pray for them and talk with them in the most informed, prepared, and wise way possible. So, what we're gonna do is walk through the different responses to the first of the 6 worldview questions to get a feel for the different worldviews. And then we'll just explain what the other 5 worldview questions are. In your resource sheet, we've included a link to a document that has all the worldview questions with the answers from each of the various worldviews that you might encounter. So you can refer to all those whenever you'd like. Okay, so the first worldview question is, what is real? Sometimes when we're sorting out a problem, we might say, let's do a reality check. That is actually based on someone's worldview. First is monotheism's view of reality. Monotheism just means that you believe in one God. In all 3 monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they all see reality in terms of a sovereign creator who is involved with his world. Each assumes the existence of God, an eternal spirit being who has created both a material and spiritual reality. Monotheists believe that there is an objective world of matter that is available to be observed. However, God's special revelation is required to know about the spiritual realities of heaven, angels, the devil, and the afterlife. For us as followers of Jesus, we believe that God's special revelation is the Bible. So monotheists regard as real what they observe in nature and understand from their religious writings. Okay, so that's the worldview we're most familiar with. Now we're going to go ahead and walk through some of the other prevalent worldviews you may encounter. My guess is that you've detected some or many of these perspectives in your interactions with people over time. Next is deism in reality. Deists proceed from the assumption that an orderly universe exists. They see its first cause as a creator who does not guide its movements, intervene in human affairs, or answer prayers. So they believe in an impersonal kind of God force. Their pursuit of what is real comes through reason and sound inquiry. They do not take seriously any revelation that portrays the miraculous. Their reality is limited to nature. Next is naturalism in reality. The naturalist assumes that matter is all that exists and it is best investigated through the scientific method. You can think of people who say, I believe in science. Unlike deism, it does not hold to God as a first cause for the universe because matter is the only thing that can be measured in repeatable laboratory conditions. It is the only thing we can be sure of. Naturalists believe that matter is real and the spirit is not. Next is nihilism in reality. The nihilist believes that we cannot know objective truth or moral values with any certainty. Because they adopt a strong skepticism, the nihilist rejects what are traditionally held truth claims about reality. At best, even scientific experiments and the records of history are inaccurate and irrelevant distortions of what is claimed to be real. These are people who are adamant that no one should ever make a truth claim because what is true or right isn't knowable to the nihilists. Next is existentialism in reality. Atheistic existentialists believe that the external cosmos is real. The problem, however, is that they find it to be ultimately absurd and meaningless. Subjective experience is the only way to arrive at meaning that is relevant to the individual. Although the existentialist believes that the objective world exists, he sees no objective reason for existing. You may have studied existentialists like Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, and Karl Barth when you were in school. Okay, next is pantheism. The term pantheism comes from the Greek words pan, for all or everything, and theos, for God. In other words, everything is God. Eastern pantheism which was made popular by the New Age movement, assumes that one impersonal spiritual force constitutes reality. Pantheists believe that spirit is the ultimate reality and that matter is an illusion. And finally, we have new consciousness and reality. Central to new consciousness is the assumption that self is the prime reality. This view assumes that we experience reality in two different ways. The visible through the senses that we have, our five senses, and the invisible through altered states of consciousness. New consciousness believes that ultimate reality is supranatural and can only be understood through altered states of mind. Whew, lots of views out there. All right, so those are the most prevalent responses to the first worldview question, what is real? Now, if you're thinking that this first worldview question feels really abstract and a little impractical, I get it, I'm with you. But as we continue on through the other worldview questions, what you'll find is that what is real is actually a foundation for the rest of the worldview questions. See, all these worldview questions, they sort of build on each other. So the second question is, who am I? Like I said, the link on your resource sheet will take you to all the different worldview answers that there are to the question, who am I? As you can see, the question, who am I, becomes a little bit more practical, and it has clear implications for how I live my life and how I make my decisions day to day. For example, the monotheistic worldview is that human beings are made in the image of God, but they are morally flawed and in need of redemption. That belief has ramifications on a number of different life decisions. Because of this view of who we are, Christians believe in the possibility of redemption, and we know that redemption is through faith in Jesus' death and resurrection. For us, that is super important for everyone to understand and believe. That's what we're told to do. That's the Great Commission, to go out and share that. However, if you're friends with a deist who doesn't believe that the creator force has any personal vested interest in us, or if you're friends with a naturalist who only believes in things that can be proven through scientific experiments, well, you see that there are some significant worldview perspectives that are making receiving that good news of Jesus a challenge. Their worldview is a real obstacle to coming to faith in Jesus. All right, so let's keep going through the list. The next worldview question, question number 3, is, where did I come from? You can see how where did I come from is closely intertwined with who am I? And that question, that's followed by, why am I here? Now you can see things are getting really practical. This question talks about our purpose for living, which deeply impacts our ability for hope, our passions, and really all of our day-to-day decisions. But why am I here necessarily flows from where did I come from? If God created me and willed my existence, my purpose is very different than if I occurred by accident. And where did I come from is linked to who am I? And to answer who I am, when you get down to it, depends on what is actually real. That first question, what is real? It feels a little abstract, but that's where you see a distinct basis for all these different worldviews. 200 years ago in America, the question of what is real was very uniform. Most everyone essentially had what we would call a Judeo-Christian worldview based on Judeo-Christian perspectives. Whether they were actually followers of Jesus or not, most people assume that there is a God who has provided some type of special revelation to guide us. 100 years ago, that was still the predominant perspective in the US, although other ideas were beginning to gain momentum. Today, if someone has some appreciation of Jesus' teaching, like the Golden Rule, even if they have some type of oh yeah, Jesus said some good things to say, they very possibly have also adopted another fundamental understanding of what is real, which cascades down into how they answer, who am I? Where did I come from? And why am I here? Which then leads to the next question. What is the basis for my values? Now we're really hitting home. If you've been watching the news or scrolling through social media or talking with a friend recently, you had to stop and ask yourself, how can they think that's okay? The answer comes from their underlying worldview, which they may or may not even be able to identify. When their underlying worldview is detached from belief in God's revealed truth, their basis for values can become anything that suits their own interests. When we reject God's special revelation, namely the Bible, we open ourselves to all sorts of self-deception. And that leads to the final worldview question. What does the future hold? Clearly, this question is closely linked to all the other questions and is super important. As followers of Jesus, we believe that everyone is going to die and everyone will stand before God to be judged. And if we can't understand and challenge people's faulty underlying worldviews, well, then they'll never recognize their need for Jesus. And really, that's the greatest tragedy of all of the deceptions, because all of eternity depends on that. Okay, so that's a lot of information, so don't feel bad if your brain kind of hurts right now. But I want to introduce you to these worldview questions because they help us to understand the background for a lot of the ideas that we think maybe sound ridiculous or far out there or illogical, but actually they're often consistent with one of these non-biblical worldviews. Because when we begin with a starting point that is contrary to God's revealed truth, well, there's no limit to how far we can drift when we carry that worldview out to its logical end and conclusion. All right, so what do we do with all of this? I want to ask you this week to take those 6 worldview questions that are found in your resource sheet, write them down, and then answer them in your own words. Here's those questions. They were, what is real? Who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? What is the basis for my values? And what does the future hold? Those 6, they're all in your resource sheet. Now don't cheat and read the Christian answers from the link and don't Google them. Just stop and think about how you would honestly answer those questions in your own words. Then share your answers with your cohort the next time that you meet and see how hearing each other's answers might help you kind of refine your own answers or even come to a better understanding of your perspective. And after you've done that, go ahead and read through all the different answers, the 6 worldview questions that are found in your resource sheet. And as you do that, as you see these different perspectives, that'll help you start to get an understanding of the underlying worldview of people who don't share in your faith. And also help you see how some of these unbiblical worldviews can try to sneak their way in, even into Christians' thinking. So we got to be careful to make sure that we have a right biblical worldview. Well, for our next in-depth Bible reading, we're going to go through the book of Romans. It has 16 chapters, so let's cover the first 8 chapters before our next meeting, and then we'll cover the last 8 chapters between our 3rd and 4th meetings this semester. The context given in the Bible Project videos is going to be really helpful for you. There's one for chapters 1 to 4, and then a second one for chapters 5 to 16. That's on the Bible Project website. So make sure that you watch those. The link for those are in your resource sheet. They're going to be really helpful. And let's also keep using the resources and tools we've been learning about, as well as the SOAP method for application. And then next time, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about apologetics, which is defending our faith from different challenges and arguments. And we'll also cover some practical tips that you can use to share your faith in a way that is relatable and effective. All right, well, I'm really looking forward to that. We'll see you next time.